Tensura and Guy decided on their course of action almost at the same time. Carrara nodded in agreement. I agree. It seems my attacks don't work on Velzard-sama. Putting aside God-destroying bullet judgment, normal attacks were unable to break through Velzard's defense. How sturdy is she, I wanted to complain, but activating a powerful technique that would work was not the right move. This is because the battle is not to kill Velzard, but to bring her back to her senses. Well, if you were to ask whether Velzard would become a companion after going through so much trouble, only God knows. It wasn't just Carrara who knew, but Guy and Tensura too. Still, I'll do it. Whether he was conscious or out of control, Carrara would not be able to defeat him anyway. For Carrara, it would be best to follow Guy and the others' judgment. Here, Rain, for example, was more pragmatic. Even Carrara, who specializes in firepower, can't deal damage, so no matter what Rain does, it's useless. It would be the same if Misery and Moss joined the battle. The only one who can defeat him is Guy, and if he had wanted to, it would have been over a long time ago. That's why you won't get lost. Rain would only respect Guy's wishes and fulfill her role in her own way, but she would prefer to choose a safe and secure plan. If Rimuru-sama has returned, then why not ask him for help? After all, that would be the most reliable option. That is what Rain really thinks. Rain believed that Rimuru would be able to handle any situation that might arise. In fact, he even went so far as to say that if he teamed up with Guy, nothing would be impossible. So why not just wait a little while instead of taking the risk now? That way, you should be able to achieve your goal easily. It was the most impure thought, but it was the truth. It was also the reason why Guy and Tensura were irritated, but Rain's thoughts were the most logical. And so, when everyone's opinions were generally in agreement, well, I guess I'm a little late. I'm glad everyone is safe. Such carefree voices echoed across the battlefield. With Rimuru's arrival, the atmosphere in the room immediately relaxed. In a panic, they teleported to the battlefield in former Eurazania, but the scene was tense in many ways. This was because Velzard, who had taken on the form of a dragon, was rampaging indiscriminately. To prevent any harm to the evacuating people, Tensura and Guy used nothingness to counteract Velzard's attacks. If nothing had happened, it would have been beautiful enough to be mesmerized. But now he didn't have the time to appreciate it. First, he had to bring Velzard back to her senses, and then he would have to negotiate and persuade her. The world is currently in crisis, and we are determined to secure cooperation at all costs. The cause of his loss of sanity seems to be Carrara's God-destroying bullet judgment, but I guess this is an act of God. It's definitely not my fault, so I don't want to have to worry about being held responsible. Hey you, stop making excuses to suit your own convenience and just cooperate. I don't understand. Guy got angry at me, but please wait. I did nothing wrong. I have a lot of difficulties too, you know. I was sent flying to an unknown location, and upon returning I was forced to deal with Milim, who was going out of control. I watched as Diablo defeated Feldway, but he escaped. There's nothing we can do about it. It's all over now. It seems he has used instant movement teleport to travel to another world, but it seems we'll know right away if he reappears here, so I'll trust Seal's words and leave him alone. So after going through a lot of hardships, I've finally made it this far. But even if you suddenly start pushing me, you know. Do you have any complaints? No, nothing. Guy seems a bit nervous, so it's probably not a good idea to provoke him. I'll also switch to work mode and try to understand the details of the situation first. I left Diablo, who was glaring at Guy, and turned my attention to the battlefield as a whole. It seemed that all of the people who had been turned into ice statues had been Released, that was why they were now in danger of death, but they were being protected by Testarossa and the others and were retreating. The warriors, led by commanders such as Karian, Frey, and Midray, were trying to get as far away as possible from Velzard, who was wreaking havoc. However, the area of influence was so vast that they were unable to reach a safe zone. Moss, Misery, and the others are the ones who protect this. A little distance away, Moss and Mizari were maintaining a protective barrier. With Sauka at the center, with reinforcements from Gerudo, they were skillfully dispersing and defending against the aftermath of the attacks that Testarossa and Guy were unable to neutralize. It was quite an impressive move. Without his efforts, there would have been many more victims long ago. I secretly admired Moss's ability. Gabble, Esprit, and Obra were also inside the protective barrier. It seems that Velzard's ice sculpture phenomenon was cancelled using the ultimate gift, Mood Maker, Psychological King, and the ability to activate fate alteration only once a day. That seems to be the case. That's seriously amazing. It's surprising that such an imitation is possible, but results are everything. I knew Gabble was an excellent player, but it seems he played a major role in this crucial moment. However, what I couldn't quite understand was why he was flirting with Sphere. I couldn't believe my eyes, but it didn't seem like they were just supporting Gabble, who was supplying energy. No matter how you look at it, it seems that Gabble and Sphere are in a romantic relationship. I'll have to question him in detail later, I vowed to myself, gritting my teeth. As for Obra, it seems she is still not fully recovered. It's unclear what kind of battle he fought, but if he had used up most of his energy, it was unlikely he would be able to recover in a day or two. Even the supplies from Gabble are not enough. For the time being, you'll need some rest. However, they can't afford to keep saying that, so they are probably staying on the front lines even if it means pushing themselves too hard. Serious. That's all there is to it. This seems even more true when compared to Gabble. While working to recover her own magical powers, Obra never let her guard down when it came to her surroundings. Seeing Obra like that, Milim thought she had gained a wonderful subordinate. By the way, Esprit is also doing its best. Although he is not doing anything particularly noteworthy, he is providing appropriate support to Moss and Misery. Despite her prickly, gal-like appearance, she has a surprisingly kind side. Well, I guess she thinks it's only natural to help Carrera, since she's working hard. In any case, the team maintaining the protective barrier seems to be fine. In this situation, what is the right thing to do? There was no need to worry. The best thing to do is to eliminate the weaknesses that are holding you back. To put it bluntly, the military forces concentrated in the former Eurasania are a hindrance. The opponent is just too bad, so there's no need to feel dishonored. On the contrary, I'm sure he'd be a great success somewhere else. So the policy was decided. I deploy my Dragon Ryu Spirit Ray Hu-Ha Kai Kai to envelop the battlefield. Not only Velzard's demon aura, but also Testarossa and Guy's nothingness. You bastard, what did you do? Guy said, trying to grab me by the collar while making up an excuse. I smoothly transformed into a slime and dodged Guy's hand. Why are you avoiding me? No. Normally you would avoid it. I let myself fall freely and escaped from the air to the ground. Then, as if he had been waiting for me, I ended up in Diablo's arms. It's scary how used to it he is, just like Shin and Shuna. Well, that's fine. Give it to me. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu, you're kidding. For some reason, an argument broke out between Guy and Diablo. I quietly escaped to avoid getting caught up in the situation and quickly rectified it. As expected of you, Rimuru-sama. A soft, pleasant scent. He felt as if his whole body was being gently embraced, and he found himself being held in Testarasa's arms. That's great. It was a truly rare experience, and I am very satisfied. Oops, this is not the time to say that. Unlike Gabble, I'm a man who can choose the time and place. So I got to work right away. First, I converted my dragon spirit haki into void collapse instead of Testaraza and Guy's void. This counteracting effect nullified Velzard's attack, and the rest was a piece of cake. That's an excellent technique. I'm impressed, Testaraza said with an ecstatic expression. Guy, who had been arguing with Diablo, approached me with a disgusted look on his face. You sealed Velzard pretty easily. Even though he said that, I was surprised. I thought I could do it intuitively, but when I actually tried it, it was easy to succeed. Seal's support was a big factor, but it was also because my amount of magic, essence, and energy had become incredibly large. With this, it seems like most problems can be solved even with brute force. Well, I don't. This time too, that's all I have to do. So, what were you planning to do from here? What? Don't you know everything? No, I just got here. There's no way I'd know. He had suddenly joined the battle without receiving any explanation. He must have wanted to do something about the out-of-control Velzard, but he hadn't come up with a way to do it. Your Carrara is the reason why Velzard turned out like that. Really? I tried to play dumb, but it was no use. That's true, but I think it was the right decision at the time. Of course. Before I knew it, Carrara was floating next to me, looking at me as if she wanted me to praise her. Should I give him a pat on the head to fulfill his request? But sadly, I was in a slime state at the moment, so trying to pet me would not look good, so I simply thanked him with a "you've worked hard." Carrara was also happy, so it seemed like this was the right decision. There's also Rain. She seems to want praise as well, but I don't think she's done that well, and to begin with, I don't think it's right for me to praise her. No, maybe it's something else. Is the work going smoothly? It went smoothly. Is it in the past tense? There's no need to ask what happened. Unable to disobey Gai-sama's orders, I was sent to such a harsh battlefield. I'm sorry for putting off Rimuru-sama's request. Rain apologized meekly. Guy is so cruel. Absolutely. Rain and I are having a furtive conversation. However, it was discovered immediately. Hey Rimuru, don't try and deceive my Rain. Deceiving someone is rude. Lately, I've been following your orders more than mine. You're absolutely right. I'm wondering about it too. That's true. Rain, you are Guy's subordinate, so it would be best if you don't get too familiar with Rimuru-sama. Oh, big sister. Are you still going to continue with that? For some reason, Rain was calling Testaraza big sister. Strangely, it didn't feel strange, but Testaraza seemed annoyed. Or rather, she seemed to really dislike it. At this point, Diablo interjected. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu, that's right. Know your place. Although he acts bossy towards Rain, this is better than before. In fact, they've become quite close. After he exposed his weakness over the painting incident, he seems to have shown a fair amount of respect for her. Even so, Diablo's arrogant attitude in all directions is troublesome. Now he's trying to snatch me away from Testaraza, and the atmosphere is becoming tense. I'm not an object, so please stop treating me however you like. Anyway, I was given a new explanation of the situation. From what I heard, Carrara had used Judgment, a divine annihilation bullet, which could only be fired once a day to shoot through the divine ancestor Twilight, who had taken over Velzard's body. I was amazed at how bold she was, but also impressed. I'm the type of person who likes to save my trump cards as much as possible. With only one shot per day, you'll probably try to avoid using it as much as possible. Carrara's decisiveness was truly impressive, as she was able to unleash such a Powerful move, without any hesitation. However, Carrara is also a long-lived species, so perhaps a day is just an instant. For her, it was entirely possible that she didn't care that much. Well, it was a good move to get rid of that bastard Twilight. Velzard's rampage aside, it seemed Guy also acknowledged Carrara. If that was the case, he should not have complained, but he had a feeling that saying so would backfire, so he kept quiet. For the time being, I'll hold Velzard-san down, so you can leave the rest to me. Okay. Yeah, while I'm dealing with Velzard, you'll be completely defenseless. In that case, I'll protect you properly, probably. Maybe. That's a lie. Diablo will take full responsibility and protect Guy. That was close. I made a light-hearted remark, intending it to be a playful joke, but I ended up incurring Guy's wrath. Guy still looked dissatisfied as he glared at Diablo. They seemed to get along really well, which was quite heartwarming, so I turned my eyes away from the scene. In conclusion, the plan was for me to hold Velzard back while Guy brought her back to her senses. He seemed to be trying to influence her mental state, so Diablo would be in charge, protecting her defenseless main body. There are no other enemies remaining on this battlefield other than Velzard, so I don't think there's anything to worry about. It's not right to let your guard down, but there's also no need to be overly cautious and concentrate your forces. Then Rimuru-sama, what should we do? Tensura, who asked that question, also seemed to have her own answer. Veldora and the others are being sent to fight against Ivalage. You guys should also hurry up and prepare and head to the scene as reinforcements. It seemed that my orders were as Tensura had expected. In the evacuation area a little ways away, Sauka and the others were having a meeting with Karian and Frey. Moss ran as a messenger to select the members who would go out into the field. I understand that it must be difficult after only just being freed from the ice sculpture, but the world is in danger, so this is no time to complain. Everyone seemed to understand this, and the troops were reorganizing in perfect unison. Therefore, Tensura's true intentions lie elsewhere. Arrangements have been made, so who do we leave behind? The moment this question was asked, Carrara's eyes lit up. Rain was also looking at me with expectant eyes. No, you're under Guy's command. I don't have the authority to give orders, so I just ignored him and gave him my answer. The only one left is Diablo. Tensura, I would like you to take along those who can fight using large-scale teleportation magic. Is that possible? Tensura looked a little disappointed after hearing my order, and then Carrara. If that's your order, then act quickly. Tensura bowed deeply and conveyed her understanding. Following that, Carrara also showed enthusiasm. Leave it to me, my lord. Whoever my opponent is, I'll eliminate them in no time. Yes, that's very reassuring. However, there was one unfortunate person. Needless to say, it's Diablo. He nodded in satisfaction and lectured Tensura and Carrara. HMPH, Rimuru. Sama trusts only me. That means you ladies still have a long way to go. That's not true. They only kept Diablo away from the front lines because they thought he was tired, exhausted, troubled, exhausted, and exhausted. Tensura frowned in displeasure at Diablo's provocation. Carrara also became combative, so I scolded Diablo with a sigh. Tensura, accompanied by Carrara, quickly took action. I think there was a bit of trouble before we said quickly, but let's forget about that. It's because I praised Diablo. It was my fault for getting carried away, so I'll be more careful next time. But I'm not the only one having a hard time. Can I stay? You go too. Rain, feeling Guy's anger, panicked and ran away. That's probably part of his charm, but I thought it must be tough for Guy too. Currently, Velzard is rampaging blindly, but no one is harmed. This is because my void collapse envelops the entire battlefield, nullifying all attacks. This meant that they could rest assured that they could leave the reorganization of their military forces to him. However, things cannot continue like this. It's fine now, but Velzard's movements are becoming increasingly active. So, Guy, how long will it take to bring Velzard-sama back to her senses? Hearing Diablo's question, Guy thought for a moment. I can't say for sure until I dive in, but it will probably take quite a while. Hearing that makes me uneasy. It's not just a few days or a week, right? I didn't doubt that he could be brought back to his senses, but the time it would take was an issue. With a battle for the fate of the world unfolding in Damargania, there was no time to waste here. Moreover, there were other things that concerned me. Even if Velzard were to return to her senses, it was unclear whether she would be an enemy or an ally. I'm confident that I can defeat her now, but that's my last resort. First, I want to talk to her, listen to Velzard's wishes, and find a compromise. However, the biggest problem was that they didn't seem to have the time for that. I hope they will cooperate voluntarily. What was the reason that Velzard-san sided with Feldway in the first place? It's just a lover's quarrel. It's pointless. Seriously. That's not right. Guy seemed angry, so I decided to leave the jokes there. Guy said, "Well, even if it takes time, I don't think it will take even a day. It won't be done by me now, but by someone specialized in calculations." Specializing in calculations. Yes, close quarters combat ability is greatly reduced, but calculation ability increases accordingly. I see, that's amazing. The key point here is that it doesn't make you weaker overall. By nature, the demon race is a race that specializes in magic, so they don't place much importance on close combat. Guy and Diablo are abnormal, but they are normally strong, even if they can only use magic. So I'm not worried about that. By the way, while I'm interfering with Velzard's mind, she won't be able to take any other actions. Don't expect me to back you up, okay? I thought so. There was also the worry of whether Velzard would be able to suppress it with void collapse. It wouldn't be a problem if it was just an emission type technique, but it would be troublesome if she noticed us and launched a direct attack. Regardless of me, if they were to target a defenseless Guy or Diablo who was in an extreme condition, there was no guarantee that they would be safe. It seemed I had no choice but to do something before that happened. I will capture Velzard. Meanwhile, Diablo was protecting the unconscious Guy. Okay, let's go with this strategy. No problem. Yeah, well then let's get started. As soon as he said that, Guy's appearance changed. A stunning redhead beauty. Wow, I've really become a woman. Of course. Rimuru-sama, if that's what you wish, I can. Okay, let's begin the operation. Because I blurted out something unnecessary, Diablo was about to start saying something funny weird again. We won't let that happen. Before Diablo could finish what he was saying, I gave the signal to start the operation. Guy decided to trust Rimuru. Therefore, after a long time, he began the ritual of state change and completed it in an instant. Although Guy had become a beautiful red-haired woman, his physical abilities were poor. His defenses were also weakened, but that did not mean that his overall strength was reduced. Specialized in calculations means that it is a form that is specialized in magic. The defense could be supplemented by multiple barriers, so it was like it was strengthened in various situations. However, this also depends on the time and situation. In cases like this, it is very difficult to make a decision. As he focused all his power on Velzard, his main body was completely defenseless. If he didn't trust Rimuru and Diablo, it was a strategy that he couldn't pull off. If that's the case, then perhaps it would be better to leave Tensura and Carrara behind to guard the area, but Guy's pride would not allow that. It was impossible for Guy to be worried when Rimuru had judged that everything was fine. Well, at worst, if you die, that's something we'll have to deal with at some point. Even if he is defeated and disappears, it may take several hundred years at worst. But he can still be revived. For Guy, the strongest, defeat is no fun. Still, he has experienced it before, so it's not something he should absolutely avoid. If I thought it would help me relieve my boredom, I wouldn't have any regrets even. If it turned out that way, and not only Rimuru, but Diablo had also become more reliable. I don't know what happened, but he looks completely different from when I last saw him a while ago. To begin with, even from Guy's perspective, Diablo was abnormal. Despite possessing combat skills comparable to Guy's, he was an eccentric demon who did not seek power. However, he pursued strength in the truest sense, and was the strongest in a different sense to Guy. The Black King's, Diablo's, true worth was that he would never lose to an opponent on the same terms. Diablo's presence was on par with Guy's. And there's even a suspicious remnant of nothingness floating around. Guy could easily see through his opponent's strength, but now that he was specialized in calculations, he had an almost perfect grasp of Diablo's abilities. If it was Rimuru who stopped Milim's rampage, then it was Diablo who faced Feldway. In other words, even without the constraint of being on the same level as Guy, there was no doubt that he had reached the same rank. He's doing great. Well, his whole body looks all shaken up, but he's no match for anybody. Rimuru's decision to leave only Diablo behind was one that Guy could understand. Even so, Guy thought, Diablo is fine, but the problem is Rimuru. Even from Guy's current perspective, he couldn't see through its existence. What is this guy? That is my honest and true opinion. If he were to ask Rimuru, he would probably just give a silly answer like, it's just a slime. That's why he didn't ask, but Guy was fully prepared to question him once this was over. Even now, Rimuru had expanded from his slime form into a strange shape and was wrapped around Velzard. It was as if gently embracing a baby. It was incomprehensible how he could freely control nothingness, something that even Tensura struggled with, but the way he treated the out-of-control Velzard like a baby was something that could only be laughed at. He had accomplished something that even Guy found impossible with ease. This was an incident that showed the abnormality of Rimuru's existence to the fullest. But still, Guy believed in Rimuru. There was no point in worrying about it anymore, so Guy decided to focus his attention on Velzard. Guy had escaped from his material body and turned into the demon's original spiritual body, and had once again returned to his male form. Unlike the real body, the state of the mind is free and flexible. Guy was an experienced manipulator and broke through Velzard's many layers of mental barriers, diving towards the depths of the soul, the true essence of a true dragon. The real action begins after I touch Velzard's heart. Guy even shed his spiritual body and became a completely defenseless astral body. If he let his guard down, Velzard's mind would swallow his ego, and Guy's offensive heartcore erosion, spiritual dive, would be broken. If that happened, Guy's consciousness would disappear, but he still felt no anxiety. There's no need to push yourself. He should dive carefully and cautiously, slowly, as if to calm Velzard's raging heart. If he pushed forward forcefully, he would destroy Velzard's heart. If that happened, Velzard would go berserk, unleash all of her energy, and disappear. And then a new dragon species will be born somewhere in this world. That would be the worst thing for Guy. Even if he dies, he will be able to fully revive with his ego still intact. However, that was not the case with Velzard. Even if they are the same soul, without a single particle of deviation, and even if their appearance and abilities are completely identical, their personalities will be completely different. Can they really be called the same being? He had never doubted it before, but suddenly, Guy began to wonder. Although he was in a hurry, Guy didn't panic and broke through the barrier. And then I found it. Velzard's young mind was sitting, with her knees hugged to her chest. Hey, I've been looking for you. Guy spoke naturally and carefully. This is the crucial moment. If she makes a mistake in this conversation, Velzard's actions will be decided at that point. For Guy, it was the first time in his life that he felt considerate towards others. At first, Velzard didn't react. However, after a short pause, she turned her vacant eyes towards Guy. And then Velzard spoke gravely. What are you here for? Did you come to laugh at me? Perhaps influenced by her state of mind, Velzard had taken on the appearance of a young girl. Guy gave a wry smile at Velzard's question. I'm glad there was a response. And at the same time, he couldn't help but react to the weak appearance Velzard showed. No, I came to pick you up. Let's go home quickly, Velzard. Guy shrugged and answered. That reply irritated Velzard. That's always the case. Guy always looked down on Velzard and made unilateral declarations. He never listened to her opinion and only conveyed his own will. He spoke without any consideration for Velzard, as if it was the natural thing to do. Velzard hated Guy's attitude. What? Guy never listens to my opinion, always makes me have to endure everything. Unable to contain herself, Velzard shouted. Once the complaints start, one after another will come out. I had the role of guiding the world my brother left behind. That's why I kept an eye on you, watching over you to make sure you didn't go out of control. In truth, I didn't want to do that. That's right. Velzard always took a step back and looked at herself objectively. He continued to exercise self-control and endure. Her younger sister, Velgrind, is freely pursuing the man she loved. His younger brother, Veldora, was acting wildly as he pleased. Velzard was the only one who had been holding back this whole time. And all of this is because you, Guy, have been recognized by my brother. Guy was someone who was recognized by Veldanava and entrusted with the world. In other words, she is an existence greater than Velzard. Aside from his brother, Guy was the only one who could destroy this world. However, Guy had no such intention whatsoever. Guy is arrogant, selfish, and kind, and yet he was very cruel to Velzard. Velzard had been watching Guy the whole time. I hoped to surpass it someday. However, before I knew it, that wish had changed and become a stronger desire. And yet, Guy didn't care about Velzard's feelings. It's always been like that. He was so absorbed in playing the game with Rudra that he didn't even look at Velzard. Just when she thought the game was over, he started siding with the mysterious slime. No matter how much time passes, he still doesn't seem to care about Velzard. Although this fact was frustrating, Velzard was fine with it. As someone with an infinite lifespan, it would be fine if she could turn to him one day. However, the situation did not allow it. I've been waiting all this time. I've never left your side. I was the only one who endured, and yet you were trying to leave me behind. No, that's not true. You are my woman thing. I care about you very much. Guy's words ignited a fire in Velzard's frozen heart. Velzard was still angry and let out all the frustration she had been feeling up until now. No, that's not true. I don't want to be your property. I want to be your equal. There's no point in becoming stronger than you, but it's much better than just being protected. Ah, I see. Velzard finally understood her own feelings. He didn't want to beat Guy, he just wanted to be of help. So now, Velzard's emotions are unstoppable. Shout whatever you want. Why do I have to side with that suspicious slime now? You should have just stayed quiet and lived in the north with me as you always have. Velzard bared her anger and lashed out at Guy with her fierce will. It became an imaginary blade and cut into Guy's body, but Guy made no attempt to avoid the attack. As if trying to absorb Velzard's anger and dissatisfaction, he simply exposed himself to the attacks without resistance. Velzard complained to Guy like a child. Well, that's why. And besides, you have the habit of accepting such a weak person, but you don't even try to accept me. What on earth am I? I've always wanted your approval. And I've worked so hard, but now I'm in no position to stand in. The attacks gradually weakened, and eventually Velzard began to weakly hit Guy's chest. That was Velzard's true feelings, and she couldn't hide them. Velzard didn't want to beat Guy. She just wanted to stand alongside him. Are you stupid? I respect you. You're my only partner. You're an idiot. I don't want to hear that from you, who always does whatever you want. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. If you didn't like it, you should have just said so. You're worrying too much about such trivial things. I'm worried. If you continue like this, your brother will kill you. Before anyone knew it, Velzard had stopped hitting Guy. Then she buries her face in Guy's chest. What does that mean? Veldanava had not yet been revived. Velzard's statement ignored that premise. Velzard remained silent for a while still clinging to Guy. Then he opened his mouth reluctantly. My brother has been resurrected.